Beneath the Wild West legends of heroic cowboys and boundless opportunities under a wide open sky lies a harsh truth. For every story of heroism, there are countless untold tales of grinding hardship, brutal violence, and profound despair. So that begs a question. If we strip away the Hollywood romance, where was the single worst place to live in the entire Wild West? We're not just looking for the town with the most famous gunfight. The real answer lies in finding the place that was the most complete and hopeless combination of lethal danger, environmental hostility, and soul-crushing despair. Today, we're going on a journey to find that place. We'll sift through the evidence, examining the most notorious towns of the era to uncover the historical ground zero of misery in the American West. If you enjoy exploring the real, unvarnished history of the Old West, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the past. Part 1. The Notorious Boomtowns. The most famous names of the Wild West were the mineral boomtowns, places like Deadwood, Tombstone, and Bodie. They were places of incredible contradiction, where immense wealth was pulled from the ground while squalor and violence flourished on the surface. They attracted prospectors, outlaws, and lawmen alike, creating a volatile experiment in the middle of the wilderness. Each one is a strong contender for the title of the worst place to live. Our first contender is Deadwood, South Dakota. Deadwood was born in sin. The town began as an illegal settlement on land that had been guaranteed to the Lakota people. Its very existence was an act of trespass and a source of constant conflict. When gold was discovered in the sacred Black Hills, a frantic rush began, and Deadwood quickly became a byword for lawlessness. The early days were exceptionally violent. One popular, if likely exaggerated, claim stated that the town averaged 1 murder per day in its first year. The town's reputation for anarchy was cemented on August 2, 1876, with the murder of James Butler, Wild Bill Hickok. The famed gunman was shot in the back of the head while playing poker. His killer was initially acquitted by a makeshift miners' court, a verdict so unjust that he had to be retried later in a federal court, where he was convicted and hanged. The incident perfectly illustrated the town's flimsy grasp on law and order. Life in Deadwood was also a battle against disease and disaster. In 1876, a smallpox epidemic swept through the camp. 3 years later, a fire that started in a bakery burned the entire business district to the ground. But the most insidious threat was a slow-moving disaster of the town's own making. The Homestake mine, the economic engine of the region, dumped its industrial waste directly into the local watershed for a century. This included an estimated 100 million tons of tailings and 270,000 tons of arsenic, creating a profound and lasting environmental catastrophe. Economically, Deadwood was dominated by vice and corporate power. Entrepreneurs ran notorious saloons and brothels, while the Homestake mine held the entire region in its grip, crushing unions and dictating terms to the individual worker. Verdict: Deadwood was undeniably a brutal and unhealthy place, but it was not without a future. After the Great Fire, the community rebuilt with brick and stone, a clear investment in permanence. It was on a trajectory, however bloody, towards stability. Our second contender is Tombstone, Arizona. Founded in 1879, Tombstone became one of the last great boomtowns of the frontier. The discovery of a massive silver lode caused its population to explode from 100 to an estimated 14,000 in less than 7 years, producing what would be billions of dollars in silver today. Tombstone is legendary for the gunfight at the OK Corral, but that 30-second shootout was just the flashpoint of a much deeper conflict. The violence in Tombstone was rooted in a profound social and political divide. On one side were the town's business owners and mining capitalists, largely Republicans from the North, represented by the Earp brothers. On the other side were rural ranchers and cattlemen, many of them Confederate sympathizers and Democrats, a faction that included the Clantons, the McClorys, and the loose confederation of outlaws known as the Cowboys. The town's proximity to the border made it an open market for stolen cattle, which fueled the Cowboys' power and created constant friction. Tombstone's existence was also a gamble against its harsh desert environment. But ironically, it was an excess of water that killed the town. In the mid-1880s, the silver mines hit the water table and began to flood. Despite massive investment in pumping equipment, the problem couldn't be solved. This was compounded by two massive fires that destroyed the business district in 1881 and 1882. When a final fire destroyed the main pumping plant in 1886, the silver boom came to an end. Verdict: Tombstone represents a society torn apart by its own internal conflicts and ultimately defeated by its environment. Its reliance on a single, vulnerable industry made its collapse almost certain. Our final boomtown contender is Bodie, California. Of all the great boomtowns, Bodie may have the most fearsome reputation. Perched high in the desolate hills east of the Sierra Nevadas, it was a place so notorious for its wickedness that it entered the national language. The phrase "bad man from Bodie" became a common term for any killer, while the story of a young girl writing in her diary, "Goodbye God, I'm going to Bodie," cemented its image as a godforsaken outpost. And its reputation was earned. It was reputed to be the worst, most violent, and most lawless town in the Wild West. Murders, shootouts, and stagecoach holdups were described as regular occurrences. The daily greeting was said to be, "Have we a man for breakfast?" a grimly casual inquiry into the previous night's body count. Bodie's environment was arguably the most extreme of any major boomtown. Its location at an elevation of over 8,000 feet made it profoundly isolated and subject to bitterly cold, snow-choked winters that could cut it off from the world for months. The mining industry was also a source of catastrophic danger. In 1879, the powder magazine at the Standard Mine exploded with the force of an earthquake, leaving a scene of horror with blackened and wounded men crawling among the ruins. The blast took 6 lives and wounded approximately 40 more. Verdict: Bodie is a powerful contender. It combined a level of casual, daily violence that was infamous even by frontier standards with the most extreme environmental conditions of the major boomtowns. The combination of its depravity and its profound isolation created a unique form of misery. Part 2: A different kind of hell. As terrible as the boomtowns were, they were fundamentally places of settlement. They were chaotic, but people went there to build something, even if it was just their own personal fortune. But there was another, and arguably worse, form of existence on the frontier: the Hell on Wheels towns. These were not towns in any traditional sense. They were temporary, mobile, and predatory camps that followed the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. They were composed of tents and crude, prefabricated shacks that could be dismantled, loaded onto flat cars, and moved to the next end-of-track location. Their population was almost exclusively young, single men, many of them hardened veterans of the Civil War, disconnected from any social anchor. And the economy that served them was purely parasitic. Entrepreneurs rushed in to set up gambling dens, dance halls, and saloons. The goal was simply to separate the laborers from their pay as quickly and efficiently as possible. These camps represent a complete absence of society, a raw manifestation of exploitation where misery wasn't a byproduct of the boom, it was the entire economic model. Part 3: The Finalists. Of all the Hell on Wheels towns, our fourth contender, Benton, Wyoming, achieved a singular and horrifying reputation. It existed for only a few fleeting months in the summer of 1868, but in that short time, it became the epitome of the soulless railroad hell. Benton was a vortex of violence. One historian observed that it was a place where murder was an everyday occurrence. A journalist visiting in 1868 described a town populated by evil-looking men under slouched hats with deadly revolvers and Bowie knives, calling it a modern Sodom. With no formal law, vigilante mobs were the only rule. One correspondent witnessed a shooter being captured by a mob, shown the corpse of his victim, and then summarily hanged from a telegraph pole. The physical setting of Benton was one of utter desolation. It was built on a barren alkali flat. The streets were said to be 8 inches deep in white dust, a fine choking powder that coated everything and made a new arrival look like a cockroach struggling through a flour barrel. The town was a collection of tents and flimsy shacks, offering no real shelter from the harsh Wyoming elements. During its brief 3-month existence, its population swelled to over 3,000 people. But this was not a community. It was a transient mass of workers and the predators who followed them. The town had 25 saloons, but no sense of a future. There was no pretense of building a permanent settlement. Its only purpose was to exist for a moment, extract wealth, and then vanish, leaving behind nothing but empty bottles and graves. Our last contender is Canyon Diablo, Arizona. Like Benton, Canyon Diablo was a child of the railroad, a temporary hell born of a construction bottleneck in 1882. While a massive bridge was being built over a chasm, a work camp sprang to life, quickly earning a reputation for pure anarchy. Its main street was aptly named Hell Street, and it was lined with saloons, gambling dens, and brothels, all operating 24 hours a day. The most enduring part of its legend is the story of its marshals. The first was said to have been hired at 3 in the afternoon and was gone by 8 that night, with 5 more quickly following him to the town's rapidly growing cemetery. While likely an exaggeration, it speaks to the town's absolute disinterest in law and order. As soon as the railroad bridge was completed, the town was deserted as quickly as it had appeared. The final verdict. So how do we choose? The famous towns like Deadwood and Tombstone were terrible, characterized by high levels of violence and environmental dangers. But they were places of settlement where the wealth being generated also funded the construction of churches, schools, and civic governments. They were societies in violent turmoil, but societies nonetheless. The Hell on Wheels towns represent something fundamentally different, the complete absence of society. They were temporary, predatory, and utterly hopeless by design. Based on a comprehensive analysis, we declare Benton, Wyoming, as the single worst place to live in the American Wild West. The argument rests on this crucial distinction. Bodie may have been the peak of boomtown misery, a place where extreme violence met extreme environmental hardship. Yet even Bodie was a town, a place where miners dreamed of striking it rich, where families eventually settled, and where a church was built. It had a chance, however slim, of a future. Benton had no such chance. It was a calculated man-made hell. It was not a community. It was a purely parasitic entity that existed for a fleeting moment with no purpose other than to prey upon its inhabitants before vanishing into the dust. It concentrated the worst aspects of the frontier, extreme violence, squalid living conditions, and total social decay, into a brief, nightmarish existence. It lacked any redeeming features. There were no families, no churches, no newspapers, no hope. In a mining town, one could cling to the dream of wealth. In Benton, a railroad worker's only prospect was to survive until the tracks moved on, hopefully with his meager pay intact. It was an existence stripped of all romance, all purpose, and all dignity. While Tombstone was famously the town too tough to die, Benton, Wyoming, was a town that was never meant to live. It is this engineered absolute hopelessness that makes it the definitive worst place to live in the entire Wild West. Thanks for watching. We believe the real history is always more fascinating than the legend. What do you think? Based on what you've heard, do you agree that Benton was the worst, or does another town deserve that title? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the American West.